The first question for today is as follows. How can we instill a deep love for Judaism in the next generation without it feeling like an obligation? So I think the best way to first and foremost instill love, to instill anything, not just love for Judaism, but really anything in our children or in others, is to believe in those ideals ourselves and to love them ourselves. Because if we don't love them ourselves, then no matter how much we try, it won't register in the others that we are trying to influence. And, they say, I don't know if you've ever heard, but there's the 8-37-55 rule. Have you ever heard of that rule? So that's right. I like it a lot. I think I believe in it. But apparently it's the rule of communication, that 8% of what you communicate is with your words. 37% of what you communicate is with your tonality. And 55% of what you communicate is with your body language. So you can try and say anything to the next generation. But if you don't believe in it, if your body is not in it, the body language, if your tonality, if your love is not felt, then it won't register. So the best way to instill here a deep love for Judaism is first and foremost to love Judaism yourself. And then you can instill a deep love. I'm very careful not to teach my children something I don't believe in, or I'm not fully subscribed to. Because I know that, especially children, by the way, are extremely intuitive, more than any adult I know. They will somehow perceive that you don't really mean what you're saying if you don't believe in it, right? So I fully have to believe in something first, and then I can teach it to others. We know that from the Shema prayer. Fascinating, because the second verse, I believe, in the first paragraph of the Shema prayer, the first paragraph, V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha, you should love God with all your heart. Then it says, Vayu advarim ha'ele, may these words, Asher anochi metzavecha hayom, that I'm commanding you today, al levavecha, on your heart. And only then does it say, Veshinantam levanecha, and you shall teach them to your children. The order here is divine, it's divinely prescribed, because what does it say first? That these words should be on your heart. Only once they are on your heart can you then teach them to your children. But if they are not on your heart, then no matter how much you try to teach them, just won't flow. So that's in general. And therefore, I would encourage everyone, every parent, certainly everyone who's trying to influence others, who should be influencing others, to really first and foremost pick 1 or 2 or 3 values, mitzvot, ideas, ideals that you want to transmit to others. But first ask yourselves if you believe in those ideals. If you don't, then work on yourself first, and then go and teach them to your children. But I think that really is the only way to instill a deep love for Judaism to the next generation. That's this question. Let's go to the other question. Yes, please. Oh, sure. 37 is the tonality, and 55 is the body language. Yeah.
Body language, not just to believe it, but to live it, and to talk with your children about why you do things.
Right.
And if they're doing something differently, ask them why they're doing it, and then have a discussion about,
That's right. Right, absolutely. It's to model it, basically. Modeling is the best form of education. I can talk about kindness to my children all I want, but if they don't see me be kind to others, it won't register, because they will figure out that I don't believe in it. So why should they listen to me? And that's true with every other idea. I can talk about learning Torah all I want to my children, but if they'll never see me with a book, it won't register. And it's true again with anything and everything. Okay. Next question here. What does Jewish unity truly look like in a polarized world? And how can each of us take responsibility for it? Okay. That's a great question. So I think that first and foremost, and by the way, I think this is relevant to the period of time we are right now living in. But just to preface this by saying that right now, as we speak, we are living during a time, a time which is considered to be a mourning period in Judaism, because during this very time between Passover and Lag BaOmer, some even say until Shavuot, a terrible plague befell our nation some 2,000 years ago. And that plague killed 24,000 students, the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. Now, when the sages got together to try and figure out why would this happen to us, what can we learn from this? Now, let me just say that it's impossible to understand God. It's impossible to understand death. It's impossible to understand many things that God does. So to try and understand fully why God had this plague kill 24,000 students, I think is impossible to understand. And the sages would agree with that too. But there is a lesson that we can learn from everything, even from tragedies. So what lesson that they draw from this? Sages said that the lesson is that we ought to respect one another more. Now, in many ways, I think Jewish unity, to now go back to the question, is achieved not so much through love. Sometimes it's impossible to love because I can't understand the other fully. I can't understand others' ways, but I can respect. It's almost always possible to respect. And therefore, the goal really should not just be unity, but rather should be harmony, where I can accept you for who you are, you can accept me for who I am. We don't have to agree. We don't have to be one, but we can respect one another. And through that respect, we can also harmonize. I've used that example so many times, but just like in a symphony, we're not asking the violin to become the cello and the cello to become the clarinet and the clarinet to become the piano. Every instrument has to be his instrument, that instrument. And together they can harmonize. And so it is with society and especially with the Jewish people. We are not like one another. We are not born to be like one another. We are each born to be unique with our own instrument. And our goal is to respect the other person's instrument and to harmonize with it. That's how Jewish unity, in a very general sense, can really take place. In a practical way, what this really means is that one, I always look for the good in the other. And I try to turn my eyes away from the bad. If I do see bad, and if it just jumps in my face, then let me not just stay with that picture. Let me not go away until I see good. And sometimes it's hard, but that's really what it means, to finding good in the other, even though all I can see sometimes is bad. So then don't move. If you're not transfixed, then go and find that good, because there's good in everyone. In the words of the Tanya, authored by Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, which I believe is the most important work of Hasidic philosophy and psychology, written some 300 years ago, in chapter 32, he says that if you see bad in others, then fine, you can hate that bad. But you also have to love the good in others. That's how you can hold two emotions at once. Hate towards the evil, but the love towards the good. Don't just focus on the evil. Find that good. So that's one way to try and achieve respect and harmony. Another way is to sometimes just say, okay, we'll agree to disagree. But in many ways, not just because it's a nice cliche, but because we also deeply understand that, as we mentioned before, everyone is unique, right? Even identical twins are not the same. And because everyone is unique, everyone has their own unique perspective. So I might not right now, with my limited brains, I cannot or might not ever be able to understand your perspective because you're unique. You're A, I'm B, or I'm A and you're B. But I'll be able to also agree to disagree because I understand that the way you view life will never be the same way as I view life. We're each different, perspectives are different, and therefore we can then agree to disagree. So that agreement to disagree really comes from the understanding and the awareness that the other is unique, and therefore I'll never be able to truly understand the other's perspective. So again, one of the 10 commandments is you should not be jealous, lo tachmod, which is the 10th commandment. Now, it's interesting because if you look at the entire verse, it says that you shall not be jealous of your friend's ox and donkey and possessions and everything that your friend has or your neighbor has. Now, the question the commentaries ask is, why does it have to enumerate the ox, the donkey, and all those other things, when anyway at the end of the verse you're saying you shouldn't be jealous of everything that he has? You said everything. Everything obviously includes the ox, the donkey. So why does the Torah have to waste words and enumerate them when anyway you're going to say everything? And the answer is because if you're jealous of something, then the only way to get rid of that jealousy is to look at everything. You can't just say, oh, I want his Ferrari, but I don't want his lifestyle. If you're going to pick his Ferrari, then you're going to pick his the whole package. You can't just knit and pick. It doesn't work like that. God gives the Ferrari with a package. And once you understand that package is not so desirable, then maybe you won't want the Ferrari because you can't separate one from the other. That's why it enumerates the donkey, the ox. You can't just say, I like his donkey, because it's everything. Everything. And then you'll get rid of that jealousy. Same with others. People come with their own items, whether it's physical items, Ferraris and so on, emotional items, psychological items, mental items, spiritual items. And everything of each person is truly unique. No, everything is alike to everything in others. So when a person comes with a disagreement, let us not say that, okay, this represents to everything. It's just one thing of the package, of the full package. But there's other things in the package that that is unique to that person, that makes that person unique. And therefore, in that way, I can agree to disagree. So that's achieving Jewish unity, or more importantly, achieving Jewish harmony. Another question here. What is one teaching from the Lubavitcher Rebbe or Rabbi Steinsaltz that changed your life, and why? Well, there are many, many teachings. Many teachings. I think it's a combination of many, many, many of the teachings of Lubavitcher Rebbe or Steinsaltz. The ones, if I have to think, if you ask me the same question tomorrow, I'll think of other teachings. But the ones that come to mind right now of Rabbi Steinsaltz, I mentioned this before, is he's teaching of the most important question of life. And that is, I've said this before, and then what? Ve'azma, very good. In other words, you've achieved something great, but then what? What comes out of it? You've flown, you've now felt all spiritual, you've had a great moment of prayer, say, but what comes out of it? If you go back to your own routine and you don't really translate that heavenly moment into the world, into bettering yourself, really, then maybe it wasn't worth having it all together. So it's what you do during your next step of life, after you've experienced holiness, after you've done that mitzvah, after you've engaged in that prayer. Is anything that change you, that you become a better person through it? Ve'azma, that's one teaching. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, I would say that there are many, many teachings, but anything worth doing is worth doing now. We've mentioned that don't delay things. If God is giving you an opportunity to do a mitzvah, do it now. If you delay it, you may never get to it. But I think one of the most powerful teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe is exactly what we spoke about before, and that is that there is good in everyone. And if we don't see it, it's not because of the other. It's because of me. It's because my eyes are not wide enough, are not deep enough. The Rebbe, by the way, lived in such a way. Whenever he saw you, you felt like you were the greatest human being alive. Because that's the way he saw you. So you felt it. And that's the way we should also see one another. Maybe just one more teaching of both the Rebbe and Rabbi Steinsaltz. I think, by the way, they had that in common, seeing the other in the other's soul, not the other's body, the other's infinity, not the other's finite being. But Another thing that I think the Lubavitcher and Rosh Hashanah had in common was the humility. I'll share with you a story. Literally, I just heard this morning from a dear friend who was also a student of Rabbi Steinsaltz. He said that many, many years ago, it's a cute story. Many years ago, he was sitting on a bench in a park in Israel, and Rabbi Steinsaltz came to him. He had never met Rabbi Steinsaltz before, so he didn't know that this was Rabbi Steinsaltz coming to him. Rabbi Steinsaltz sees him, and he sees that he's holding a book. He says, "What book are you reading?" He says, "I'm actually reading the commentary of Rabbi Steinsaltz on the Tanya," not knowing that, again, this is Rabbi Steinsaltz that he just met. And Rabbi Steinsaltz says, "So what do you think about Rabbi Steinsaltz's commentary on the Tanya?" He says, "Well, it's good, but there's one area which I disagree with him." So what area? And he explained to Rabbi Steinsaltz, not knowing that it's Rabbi Steinsaltz, where he disagrees with Rabbi Steinsaltz. And Rabbi Steinsaltz says, "Well, I think you either misunderstood this, and you really should understand this issue this way, or maybe it's just that Rabbi Steinsaltz is not as great as people think he is." Fine. A few weeks later, this same person goes to a class of Rabbi Steinsaltz. He had never seen Rabbi Steinsaltz before, and he's astounded to see that the person giving the class is the same person who he met in the park and told him Rabbi Steinsaltz is not as great. And as soon as Rabbi Steinsaltz saw him, he had a big smile on his face. He said, "You see, he's not as great as people think he is." And they had a big laugh. But this was Rabbi Steinsaltz par excellence, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe too. They had this humility, and they knew what is humility. This was a teaching of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Humility is not thinking of yourself less. That's not what Rabbi Steinsaltz meant. Humility is knowing that you have skills, that you have talents, knowing exactly what they are, but also knowing that if God had given those skills and talents to someone else, that someone else would have done a better job with them than you. And that is what they had in common, that tremendous humility. Okay, one last question here. You often speak about the soul's infinite light. How do we access that light in our day-to-day struggles with doubt or anxiety? Yes, it's not just doubt and anxiety that can cloud this access to the soul and its infinite potential, but it's many other things too. Even just challenges of life altogether. But I think that, to me at least, prayer does that. When I connect to my soul 3 times a day, in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening. And the goal of that connection is really to access my soul, to remind myself of who I am. I think also it's surrounding yourself with people who can still believe in you when you lose belief in yourself. That's tremendously important, whether it's mentors, family members, or good friends. And number 3, I think that in many ways, spending time with others and serving others will remind you of the force that you are. Very often, the best remedy to anxiety or doubt or confusion in general is to go out of yourself. The best way to go out of yourself, because if you're with yourself, you're with doubt, you're with anxiety. But how do you go out of yourself? You go out by serving others. Then you're other-oriented, you're not self-oriented. But when you serve others, it's not just, having a good drink with someone else. It's really serving others. Because when you're having a good drink with someone else, it might help because you're with others, but really there's no meaning to that moment so much. So what do? You serve others, because when you serve others, you realize that, wow, you do have influence in the world. You can better this world. And by realizing that, you also realize that this power comes from your soul. Your soul, all it wants to do is serve others. And that's why God has empowered the soul with that unique talent to serve others. So I think the third best way to do this is by serving others. And then it will remind you that really you are a lamplighter, as one of the Hasidic rabbis said. You are there to light other souls, to spark other souls. And by sparking other souls, you'll realize that your soul indeed has this infinite light, because that's where that light that you're giving others really comes from.